Welcome back, everybody, to Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition in conjunction with our partners at Triax 57. I'm Joe Martucci. We have Dan Skeldon here. We have Palma Shiles, and we are getting into December. Today's topic is the changing dynamics of 100-year floods. 100 years sounds like a long time, Dan. You are a Patriots fan. It looks like it might be sooner than 100 years before the Patriots win their next Super Bowl based on the way the Patriots are playing.
I'm impressed. I thought we'd have that, that rebuilding decade. It turned out to be a rebuilding half a decade or less. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay. Yeah. I'm fine with the Patriots, but as a Ravens fan, we really need to win a Super Bowl because we're just like wasting our time here. Palma, 100 years, long time here. Eagles, but you guys won last year, so it's okay. You don't have to wait 100 years. If you wait a few years, it's okay.
Yeah, when you bring up rebuilding, I'm a big hockey Flyers fan, so that's what I've been hearing for a while now, rebuilding.
Right.
But yeah, I'm anxious to talk to our guest tonight because, me dealing with a lot of flood terminology all the time and FEMA and, BFE, to me, the term 100-year flood, 500-year flood is so frustrating because, people think, oh, we just had that, so we're good for a long time. But
Yeah.
Anyway, we can continue.
Yeah, no, and we have Hamed Moftakhari from the University of Alabama. He has been at the University of Alabama for about 7 years now, and he wrote a piece about the changing dynamics of 100-year floods. Super interesting. I agree with you, Palma. 100-year floods, maybe not the best way of explaining things. I'm going to imagine, Ahmed, you agree with us on that one. And welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Great to be with you. And yeah, definitely agree. And it definitely worth talking about it. How we understand that this, what we call it 100-year flood, how it's been perceived and how it's been calculated to avoid those misunderstandings that could be common, and which is, I'm glad to be here with you to talk about it.
Excellent. So let's just get into it. What does a 100-year flood actually mean? Tell us what that means for the audience.
Okay, so first thing that I would say is that it's not as it sounds, probably, and that is kind of the reason that is kind of in many cases misunderstood. Because when we say 100-year flood, it sounds like a schedule for the flood, which basically is not true. It's not a schedule, it's about probability. So a 100-year flood is a magnitude of the flood that we expect on every single year with a 1% chance. So that's about the probability of experiencing that level of flooding, which when we convert it, so basically scientifically, that 100-year is the return period of the flood, and return period is basically 1 over what we call it annual exceedance probability. So it's a probability that we convert to a time frame. But I see that, like anybody else, that when we say 100-year, it sounds like a schedule that if we experience this year, we're not going to experience it in the following 99 years. But this is very misunderstood way of explaining 100-year flood. 100-year flood is a flood that is a severity, is a level of flood that we expect in any given year by 1% chance. So even if we have experienced the 100-year flood this year, the chances is still the same next year. It's going to be 1%, and the year after, and the year after. So every single year, 1% chance of occurrence or exceedance.
Is there any chance that the probability may be used in the future? Because I think people, the average viewer, the average, social media user might understand like the 1% chance. You explained it so well, but that probability seems to make more sense to the average person, does it not, than the misunderstood term 100-year flood?
I guess so. The reason that the community has adopted the year rather than probability in the past has been because people have been more comfortable with that way of communication and understanding. But I totally agree that if we try to educate and make it more people more comfortable with the concept of probability and helping everybody to understand what the probability is going to say, it's going to be probably becoming more and more common in our language, and adapting that is going to be becoming more and more easy. But like I'm assuming that that 100-year flood has been adopted in the past because on average, we expect one of these incidents over the following 100 years. So that on average is probably very much connected to the what we call it probability, because it's not necessarily going to happen once in the 100 year. On average means there is probability for such events on average over the following 100 years.
A quick follow-up to then too. How often are the averages recalculated? Like, let's say, a place gets 2 100-year floods in like 3 or 4 years. Does that immediately throw off the average, or are these averages, recalculated every so many years?
That's actually a really good question, because this brings us to a concept in general hydrology. We call it the stationarity. So majority of what we have and what we calculate is based on the assumption of what we call the stationary system, which means the characteristics of the system are not changing over time. So whatever we have seen in the past and whatever we have learned in the past is going to be applicable today and in the future. But I guess that what you just correctly mentioned needs a revisiting in our assumptions first. Are we really dealing with a non-stationary system that needs revisiting over time? That if we accept it, which there are a lot of evidences for that we should, and ignoring that characteristics of the system that is changing over time is not helping us to characterize the risk. So once we accept that we are dealing with something that is changing, then we are going to adapt something that is not necessarily stationary. And as you said, so that would be the first step forward, as saying, okay, how long what we have calculated based on the past information remains valid, and how often we would like to revise it or reconsider it. And so I guess that's a very valid question, which could be definitely brought up, how often we should see that our stationary assumption being waived in the nature, such we go move forward with some updates and revisits.
Now, what is the criteria to be called a 100-year flood? And do you know any like real examples of what we did call a 100-year flood?
The criteria is basically based on, again, so since it's based on the probability, it's about the frequency. So this is very location specific. At every single location, we have the data, we have evidences of occurrence of the same system, the same phenomena, and then the 100-year event is based on the frequency that we have experienced that. So I guess this is very much tightly connected to the frequency of observing that phenomena. Is that the answering your question, or what you had in mind?
I more meant like, what is the severity of this type of flood?
I see. Okay, so I guess this is something that is very location specific. A 100-year flood level in New Jersey is going to be totally different than a 100-year flood level in Texas or in California, because these are location specific data. The concept of annual exceedance very much depends on the dynamics of the system. So an example is that, let's say in the Gulf Coast, we have a lot of storm surge activities. And so such extremes could happen very frequently. And so to be very large deviation from the common tidal fluctuation, as opposed to like somewhere like West Coast, according to the climatology and topography, the deviation from a day-to-day tidal might not be much significant as it is in the Gulf Coast. So, I mean, when we say 100-year flood, it's not necessarily a physical criteria that we define 100-year flood. It's a level of tolerance that we as, sorry, just so.
You took the house, you brought the lights out. It was so good. You mic drop.
So sorry about it. So just so it's not necessarily a physical phenomenon. It's based on the agreed upon level of risk tolerance that we as a community, as a whole, as a nation, we agreed on. We design our flood insurances based on a 100-year flood, and that 100-year flood is a very local information. So a 100-year flood is not necessarily a specific criteria or a specific depth of water.
Got it. All right. Well, we're going to take our first break here. We'll come back on the other side on Tidal Flooding Talk.
Become a champion with us in Atlantic City.
Well, welcome back to this week's Tidal Flooding Talk, where we're not only talking just flooding, we're talking flooding on a historical scale, probability and 100-year floods, and we continue our conversation now.
Yeah. So one of your focus areas is on nuisance or that minor stage flooding. And we deal with this all the time. I mean, at the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, all of our member towns, I don't say all, but let's say 90% of them deal with this repetitive flooding that's just slowly chipping away at, the shoreline, but also getting onto the streets. Just tell me what sparked your passion for that minor nuisance kind of flooding, and what kind of research are you doing about it right now?
Yeah, okay. So I guess back in 2015, that was the first time that I got myself into that direction of nuisance flooding. And so nuisance flooding or minor flooding by definition is the level of flood that is not causing injuries or significant damages. So it's basically a few inches of water underground that does not cause any casualties or significant damage, but it is big enough to cause traffic interruptions, to cause business interruptions, to get your people trouble moving around. And so the question was that if the level of impact at the incident level is somehow negligible as compared to those 100-year floods, should we really ignore them, especially when it comes to resilience planning? And that sparks the research direction that I was trying to take a look into. Okay, there is something that we probably do not systematically consider in these regard, is that 100-year flood by definition is expected to happen only once in 100 years, but these are repeated floods, so we might experience them every other week or so, every other day or so. That means it's like throwing a penny while walking on the way. And so the traffic interruption at the incident level might not be as losing that large buildings or losing those infrastructure, but over 20 to 30 years, if you accumulate the costs associated with traffic interruptions, business interruptions, all the way. So that was the time that we tried to look into, okay, how often do we really experience these, and how it helps us to characterize the risk with regard to these repetitive minor flooding. And so that motivated us to develop an index. We call it cumulative hazard index, which basically looks into how much we lose, however negligible as opposed to those extreme events, how even those negligible costs, if we accumulate over time, is going to become significant. And so that is not the only issue. The other issue is that these repetitive floods are becoming more and more repeating, so more and more frequent. So what that means is that in the past, we might had once in a month or once every couple of seasons, but more and more as sea level rises, these events become more and more frequent. That means the accumulated costs associated with these are becoming more and more common. And so we are experiencing those more common traffic interruptions and business interruptions, which under the projections, I've just had a few examples in mind that like currently there are cases along the coastal United States that they might not experience more than like 10 days of nuisance flooding per year. But as per our projections of sea level rise that we have published studies on that, by mid to end of this century, they might experience up to 100 days of nuisance flooding. That means water level at the coast is going to exceed a threshold that cause those nuisance events around the coastal community and so interrupt their day-to-day life.
Wow.
Now, what do
Okay.
you think that coastal communities should be doing more about this or in reaction to this?
I guess there are the multiple actions, the multiple levels are needed. These are the impact. These are the events that are experienced locally, but they are not necessarily could be managed locally. What I would say is that, as I explained, one major driver behind all those sea level increased nuisance floodings are sea level rise, and sea level rise, as we know, is a byproduct of a warmer climate, and so a lot of these solutions could be at larger scales, but at local scale, I'm guessing that being proactive is something that we need to be before waiting till the time that the infrastructure is not working anymore, and we are at the point that we are really experiencing them. And proactive is, to my understanding, could be partially planning land developments, and so the areas that you currently consider to be dry might not necessarily remain dry in the future. And another aspect is that a lot of these high tide flooding incidents could be managed with like environment friendly solutions. And so if we work with the local communities, with the ecosystem experts, they could help, because this is about water level and like day-to-day waves, and those could be, because there are numerous nature-based solutions that might not be as effective when it comes to extreme events, but those nature-based solutions are still very effective when it comes to relatively minor events, because those are not such extreme multiple meters of storm surge. Those are day-to-day tides, and so with the nature-friendly solutions, those could be managed. And the other aspect is that we are currently seeing a lot of development along the shoreline. There are statistics about people migration towards the coastline. So if we do not foresee this coming more frequent nuisance flooding in the coming decades, our urban development and infrastructure design might not be necessarily considering those increased water level and high tides. One quick example is that a nice coastal town might have designed a drainage system for stormwater management, and so the drain could be to the ocean outlet. But without considering the effect of sea level rise, the capacity of that drainage network is not as it is designed today. And so these are all the reasons that you might have experienced urban flooding, high tide flooding, nuisance flooding, which could have been prevented, could have been predicted, given the projected sea level rise rates.
Great. We're going to take one more break. We'll come back on the other side with Tidal Flooding Talk. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more.
Hello and welcome back. You are watching Tidal Flooding Talk. We are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, who would like to remind our viewers to build responsibly. A well-planned build can save you money and protect your home. Building just 1 foot above the minimum elevation requirement can lower insurance costs and reduce flood damage. And don't forget to elevate your mechanical equipment like air conditioners and generators. Small changes can make a big difference. Which I also wanted to lead in by saying, on a smaller scale, people do want to know what they can do to help reduce, flooding in their town. And, I know that a lot of coastal communities have increased their zoning regulations in terms of like impervious coverage and things like that. Do you think that is effective?
It sure is. I guess we are when we are talking about flooding, it's about what we call excess water that does not have room to go, so it goes over land. And so a lot of these zoning, what we call it, and those the impervious area managements, those are all well measures that help reduce the amount of water that has no room to go through. And so basically, because let's say if it rains or if it's in a coastal region, so when the water does not have room to go to the soft surface through previous areas, of course it goes over land and causes flooding. And so all these management measures, and so land development planning is going to be effective.
I'd like to go back to I'm just out of curiosity, not sure if you're going to answer this question, but I'll pose it to you anyway. The talking probabilities, and I think the 1 in 100-year floods, probably the most common we see. And obviously there can be any number in the denominator there, right? Because it's a probability. What's the highest 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000-year flood, that you've studied or can recall that's happened here across our country?
Okay, that's a very good question. And this is something that we theoretically have some answers to it. Because what happens is that these numbers are by the byproducts of the formula, the estimations that we have. But the accuracy, because these are going to be so-called extrapolation, we are going to estimate the length of record, which we don't have the record for it, and these are based on mathematical calculations. So generally, as a rule of thumb, is that if you have record of sea level at a given location for a given period of time, it's usually at a good level of accuracy if you estimate the return period 4 to 5 times the length of record. Beyond that, you could always do that because that's math equation. Whatever you number put in, it's going to give you something. But how reliable that estimate is depends on how long of record you have. So to answer your question, yes, we have areas along the coastline that we might have closer to 200 years of quality record estimates. For those specific locations, we could have estimates of 500 years or closer to 1,000 year estimate of the flooding. And so there has been some record floods in the history of U.S. which has been costly. And so there have been some publications. I guess one of the largest have been Hurricane Katrina in Louisiana, which left behind a lot of damage.
All right. Well, Ahmed, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us about this. It's something that's near and dear to the Coastal Coalition's heart. Where can people find more of your research and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
Oh, I was just saying, where can people find more of your work?
Oh, you mean where to find the products?
Yeah, products or the research that you're doing or the work that you're most proud of.
I see. Okay. So basically, down here, I have a research profile and we have a portal that we create interactive maps for the people to play around with that. And we have a so-called GitHub page that people could, researchers could use them. But a lot of our products where we have been lucky enough to work with our fellow partners like NOAA, scientists, and offices who basically we can merge and integrate what our products into their products. So if we're working right now, so in the future, if people are going to obtain high tide flooding information from NOAA portals, those are researchers like us who have produced those information for those federal agencies based on funded projects. So I guess it's going to be a portfolio of various pages, including our own research webpage at the University of Alabama, our GitHub page, a research portfolio, and also some of those federal outlets.
So you're in many different places. You can find them in many different places. You poke around the internet and you'll find them. All right. We're going to wrap up with the one thing we can't stop talking about, tidal flooding or otherwise. It is December. Palma, what's on your mind? Is it Christmas?
Of course it is. You know, Christmas is just my favorite holiday. I've been, thinking about it for a while, but I try to stay quiet because I know it can be obnoxious sometimes. But yeah, I'm very excited for Christmas, and yeah, that's all.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think Palma has ever been obnoxious, even if she talks about Christmas in July. I just don't think you have that in you. So, but December is the time to talk about it. For me, I'm going to bore you guys with snow. I'm the snow lover. And December 5th is what I can't stop talking about, because there was a time where it was like 6 out of 8 years where December 5th had plowable snows. We're coming up on that day. I want to kind of recreate that magic, and I'm can't stop talking about a snowy December 5th this year, even if I wish cast it.
That's the day that I'm moving.
Oh, okay. Maybe not this year then.
Wait,
but you know what? So be it. Whatever.
Is this Jersey Shore? Is this South Jersey?
No, this is South Jersey. There was South Jersey. 2005 to 2012. In that window there, it was a magical day. It always snowed.
Okay.
Hopefully not this year for Palma. Maybe we'll.
Well, you know what? I think that would be. I mean, it would be pretty. So
it's good luck if it snows on your moving day. Did you know that?
No, I do. Yeah,
I did not know that.
Sounds right.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with. So I'm now taking early morning walks, like pre-dawn walks, and pretty much every morning I see deer outside, and I'm walking. I always wonder what they're thinking, because I get close to the deer. The deer don't move. They look at me. I'm looking at them. I'm thinking they're going to come at me. Are they thinking that I'm going to come at them? I'm not sure. Eventually they do run though, when I walk closer. So I'm guessing that they're afraid, but I feel like I'm rolling my, I'm pressing my luck that they're just going to keep walking away from me as I walk towards them, because maybe one day they'll get mad and charge at me. So if you see me all bloodied up for a tidal flooding talk one day, that's probably why. I'm at good. We talked about Christmas, we talked about snow, we talked about deer. We got all kinds of things.
Okay, for us, December is the end of fall semester in academia. Yes. So, and also in our community, we have a big scientific event. It's called American Geophysical Union meeting, fall meeting, which always hosts in December, which more than 25,000 scientists get together to discuss science. This year is in New Orleans. So these are what is on my mind for December.
Well, I have to say, New Orleans is the best conference city in America, hands down. We have our American Meteorological Society conference there every couple of years, and including this year, 2025, it was in New Orleans in January. It's always fantastic. So I hope you enjoy that. All right, for Ahmed, for Dan, for Palma, I'm Joe. We will be back with you next week on another Tidal Flooding Talk. You can find more from us every Tuesday. New episodes come out at 7 p.m., but you can always watch whenever on anybody's social media platforms. You can see it on Dan's, you can see it on mine. We have Palma on Instagram. There's no way not to find us. We'll chat with you next week, everybody.